We talk about products here on Zážeh quite often. We discuss a lot how IT companies in particular came up with the idea of productizing something. But if my memory serves me right, we haven't yet discussed how to productize your head and your know-how. If this has caught your interest, then stay with me. Good day, I am Martin Hurych, Business Accelerator, mentor and coach for owners and directors of technical, technological and manufacturing companies as well as their teams. My job is to help these owners and directors find a place in the market for their companies where they will shine, thrive commercially, and where the owners and directors will enjoy their business again. If you enjoy what I do for you, then I have the usual offer and request. Try checking out www.martinhurych.com/newsletter and leave me your email there. You won't regret it. I already have over 1,700 people like you in my database, and every week I send them news from the world of strategy, innovation, business, and working with people. And believe me, I would be really happy to see your email on that list. As I hinted before the theme song, today I would like to discuss productization again. And from a slightly different perspective, they say that if you only sell your head, you can very easily become the most expensive freelancer in your own company. And especially in the age of artificial intelligence, there is a big question of whether this is actually the way forward, how to scale the company at all, because they say that a lot of information is almost free today. Well, and I would like to discuss with today's guest precisely how to think about this, how to productize your head and the heads of your colleagues in such a way that you are not dependent on selling your own time or only your own time at a time when artificial intelligence and changes in business models are raging everywhere. To discuss this, I have invited Lubos Pirkl. Good day.
Good day.
The founder, owner, and one of the two managing directors, if I remember correctly, of the company CFDSUPPORT.
Yes, Martin, excellent. Good day. I'm glad to be here with you today.
I'm glad to be here with you too. I'm glad you accepted the invitation. It was a bit last minute, and I'm all the happier for it. CFDSUPPORT, and today we are going to talk about a company that profiles itself, in my opinion, in a relatively narrow segment of physical modeling. We were saying before the recording that this is something I briefly stumbled upon back in my student days. Can you actually say what you do and how you started?
Sure. So, look, actually, CFD, that's actually computational fluid dynamics. That's basically like our field, which actually runs through our entire operation. As you said at the beginning, Martin, it is a very narrow segment. It is a very narrow field that we deal with. It is then computational fluid dynamics. That means imagine that we simulate, let's say, aerodynamics, meaning whether like air flows around a car, around a formula, but also like on a wind turbine but also a water turbine.
I used to do ventilation heat exchangers.
Oh, excellent. Well, of course. So there is again more heat transfer. Those thermal, let's say, exchanges. That's also part of the field, definitely. We at CFDSUPPORT specialize like purely in aerodynamics, but we do heat transfer too. And yes, they are then calculations. Let's go back to that characterization of the field. It is a very small field, which is actually, it's a young but very dynamic science that is growing. It originated, let's say, in the 80s, became mass market, and is growing, I don't know, let's say 15% every year globally. It is very, let's say, future-oriented, because the competition for simulations is physical measurement, and that is really very, very expensive today. Like, let's calculate like orders of magnitude more expensive than simulation, and also like measurement. Measurement is simply like going down, and simulations are going up. That is like a sign of today's times.
I wouldn't want to be wrong, but at least at the time of recording, you are the first guest who doesn't have a single client in the Czech Republic. How did you manage that?
Well, this is an interesting question, and maybe deserves like a slightly broader answer too. We founded the company back in 2009, still during our PhD with my colleague Jirka Šimonek, who then left the company after about 8 years. He was attracted by something else, the world of finance and so on. So I was glad to stay in the company, stay alone as the owner. And yes, we actually in the Czech Republic, and it is such a peculiarity. And actually, when you say it, I realize that probably few people have this. We are like an original Czech company that started already still during school, during our studies, and has lasted now for like an incredible 17 years. It's terrible when I say it. Until recently, I was still saying we were a startup. I'll probably have to change that a bit. Well, and we started. Now actually, what do you have when you go for a PhD? You have your head, as you said. You know how to use a computer a bit. Let's say actually back then we still knew how to use a computer quite well.
Yes.
And so what? So you offer services. You just go to the market with a service. We back then in that year 2010, it actually started for real. Then we still had like years of studies ahead of us. And with my colleague Jirka, we simply drove around like the entire Czech Republic in his second generation Octavia. And now we like offered like our consulting services everywhere. We wanted to offer support. It is in the name CFD support. We wanted to support, let's say, development teams that need to simulate aerodynamics, need like internal, external, it's liquids, gases, it's not just like one application. It is really like in terms of application, it's like a broad thing. We then traveled really like you could say the entire Czech Republic. I dare say we were like really almost everywhere. One of my first disillusionments was I thought to myself, no one will ever talk to us. It will be hard to get a meeting. Mistake. Getting a meeting in the Czech Republic, at least we're talking about the year 2010, but I assume that this thing hasn't changed, was easy. The doors were relatively open. We also had like a friend, also a student, who cold called meetings for us. We went to meetings. People talked to us. It was very warm. Technically, it looked like cooperation very often. They even like hosted us there very often. They took us to production. We saw like really like those productions. We're talking then like our customer could always only be large, simply in the Czech Republic, manufacturing companies, simply businesses that can afford to like invest in development and in these things, which development typically pays off over a relatively long time. So it's simply some company with a longer vision and so on. And we then saw a lot. We traveled a lot. Well, but a big disillusionment came. There were like no callbacks. No one like called back. It didn't have any follow-up. And now we thought like, what is the problem? But like we kept traveling, and that lasted maybe 2 or 3 years. We travel everywhere. Good guys, you have it great. We're gonna do it. And we didn't have any orders really, like nothing happened. A few times we did a pilot project for free, which means that we simply like idiots, I don't know, for 3 months, every day got up in the morning, worked. We already had some offices rented cheaply in an incubator in Vysočany. And actually we worked, but simply no orders anywhere. So for a year and a half, we had absolutely no money, which during a PhD and so on, it was simply difficult. But on the other hand, we were, in this respect, we were like young, we had time. So our investment was primarily time. Money there wasn't even anything to invest. Well, a year and a half of nothing. After a year and a half, then we got our first order, and then others came soon after. And as soon as we already had like some experience, some like reference, then it was easier and easier. So our consulting activity, the consulting business plan, started to take off. It was very painful, very lengthy. Several times we wanted to quit. We persevered. That is simply one of the most important qualities of entrepreneurs, to persevere, not to give up. We had and put all of that in there back then. And the consulting part took off. Now I'm coming back in a roundabout way to your original question. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten why the Czech Republic, why we don't have the Czech Republic. So gradually we then get to the point that we like the consulting activity was like, okay, we already had about 2 employees back then who could be supported from those projects, and the 2 of us as founders. And somehow we made our way through like that thicket of those projects. And after, let's say, those 3 years, we realized that doing projects, it's no fun, because the customer always, at least in our field, always expects much more than they can get. Those simulations, they are quite complex and difficult, and the customer expects fast, cheap, accurate. Which of those can actually be met? Fast, hardly, cheap, that can be met, but at the expense of what? At the expense of growth. And accurate, that is very difficult, you know, in our field. That simply accuracy it's such a holy grail that like everyone wants it, but only very rarely does like someone discover it. Well, okay, so this was difficult, but then we had customers in the Czech Republic, at least some, and for those consulting services, but a service sometimes starts, sometimes ends. You know, that means you are in constant like tension, which actually, of course, belongs to business. This will end. What next? What next? What next? So over time, we decided to change these things, and we turned our acquired experience and skills and these things into a product. And I still haven't answered why then we don't have customers in the Czech Republic, but I will work on it, you know? So look, we found out over time that in the Czech Republic, we have, you could say, mainly two types of companies. One are companies that are subsidiaries of large companies.
That's what I was getting at.
From abroad. And those are big companies, and reasons to cooperate are very hard to find, because they actually, when they already have this development here, you know, we're still talking. We supply to development, you know, to something that isn't like a core sales thing. You know, the company's product is sold, but we support development, you know. So when those companies, those subsidiaries of big parent companies in the Czech Republic already have that branch and they have development here at the same time, they very often have prescribed both the software and how they will do it. It's actually, we always used to call it Euro shoveling, you know. It's simply something where actually something was just done like cheaply, but prescribed from abroad. It's very hard to sell there.
A follow-up, is it actually development, or is it like shoveling in development?
Yes. I hope that this would already be below your radar. Okay, we can get to that. It's very hard to sell there.
Is it actually development, or is it like shoveling in development?
Yes. I hope that this would already be below your radar. Okay, we can get to that.
No, because actually, as soon as you said it, two possibilities occurred to me of what kind of companies are here, you know. I would strongly plead for the first one, where we can say we have such smart people here that they actually do the CFD simulation themselves. Or, and this is significantly worse, either the development isn't here at all and ran away somewhere abroad, or, and this is a new finding for me now, there is some development here, but actually, like, it's not development, but it's that kind of drudgery in development that you have to work through, you know. And that second alternative really scares me at a time when we say that this republic should move from assembly plants to a higher performing economy with higher added value. So which option is more likely?
Okay, so I certainly don't want to generalize for the whole Czech Republic and the whole industry and so on. Like, I'm talking
what you saw
from what we saw, and on top of that, it's a decade ago. Development for, let's say, engineering simulations, computational fluid dynamics. So that first group of companies, those are the parent companies. That's where the money is. It's simply 80% of the market. That's where we want, or we wanted, and we still want to be. It's hard to get to anything there, because if we offer them software there, they have it dictated from the outside. If they even do it, we assume they do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on our list simply. And it's hard to get in there. They have it dictated. It's simply really like some kind of cheaper doing what would otherwise be done simply at their home in the West, because those companies typically keep that development with them, like in that core. So there we didn't succeed there. Plus then that CFD business and these things have huge inertia. You know, when you get a customer and you have them for years, you'd have to do like a lot of things wrong to get rid of you, to lose them. When you lose a customer, again, you can forget about them for years, because they'll simply stay with the competition. It's related to data consistency, managerial decisions, risk. So we might get to that later as a very interesting aspect. Anyway, okay, we're still returning to the fact that there is that first group of companies. They have the money, but their hands are tied. Then there is a second group of companies. Those are, let's say, companies restored in restitution after the revolution, or newly founded on the foundations of something that was already here. They are very clever Czech owners, founders, and entrepreneurs. But there is also a problem with them. We sometimes like also jokingly call them budget-oriented managers. Would you try to guess, Martin, what the problem is with them?
Well, at the time when I had something similar in my sights, we usually talked about the fact that development, yes, but actually as cheaply as possible.
Of course, exactly. Like I see that I'm speaking here with an experienced veteran. That means, of course, money, simply budget oriented. It's a joke. Of course, it's all about money. I still remember with a colleague now, we laugh about it. Sometimes we still see each other over a beer, of course. Once we went, a 300-kilometer trip to Northern Moravia, and there a very successful, in quotes, meeting lasted about 10 minutes after we started talking about money. One owner of a Czech company told us that for the price of simply our first project that we would do for them, he would have a crew of workers for at least a week. So this is how people very often think and thought. And again, I'm talking a decade ago. These things are changing as younger people get simply into those leading positions in companies. So the problem were the budgets. Simply in the Czech Republic, there is no history of investing in development simply with those Czech companies, with those Czech founders. And it's logical. Simply those Czech founders chase work, chase cash flow, chase simply things, chase operations, and that they would invest and let's say, I don't know, hundreds of thousands into some simply innovation of their products. They always have there will be time for that when they generate those profits that might not be there. Again, it's invested elsewhere. So we actually, I'll still finish that first question you asked me about 15 minutes ago. In the Czech Republic, we didn't thrive. We realized that then these two types of companies are simply a big problem. For the reasons I mentioned here. So we and I actually wanted it the whole time and actually realized that it's in me. We simply wanted to go out. We wanted to go abroad. So we are abroad.
What actually changed abroad compared to the Czech Republic? Is it just the fact that they are used to modeling, drawing, investing in development, and now this might be unpleasant for all of us. Now this isn't personal, but that actually there used to be a time, and in a lot of fields there still is, that we are just cheaper. That actually, to your good fortune, but yes, even that was Euro-shoveling, outwards.
Yeah, well, that sounds interesting, and now I'm actually thinking if that's how it is. Well, actually, it is, yeah, but that's terrible. I actually, well, it is like that, but okay, let's develop that thought. So first of all,
it's terrible.
Again, I'm speaking only for the engineering simulation market, software, and some kind of computer science. I'm not talking about other things. Those I don't understand. I say that openly. That means our market, that computational fluid dynamics is a highly globalized market. That means there is no Belgian, German, and Russian software. There is just only one software market, which everyone knows, that means in every country in the world, everyone knows the top 3 players. And then there's several smaller ones like us, for example, who are trying to bite off a piece of their pie. So the market is globalized. So succeeding on it with a good product seemed like it could actually be easy, because when you get high enough on that list, you'll just be in that selection pool. And then what you offer, what is your uniqueness? And yes, now I'm getting back to the answer to your question. Yes, that it's actually a reversed Euro-shoveling, only actually outwards. Well, yes, it is like that. We know it. We started with going out. Then our actually knowledge, we're already talking about some fourth year of the company's existence. All our knowledge we packed into a product, into open source packages. We managed to get onto the software market, which is like that. And yes, our first, let's say, uniqueness, which we thought would make a dent in the world, was the price. Meaning that we started with a low price, which we thought would disrupt the global CFD market, because we said, okay, our software can do 90% of what this expensive software can do, which costs maybe those. And just so you have a reference, so the top software, the number one, costs 20,000 euros per person per year. That's just like a golden standard. So we said to ourselves, we'll go for a quarter and everyone will tear our hands off. So some things happened, some things didn't.
I actually understand. And there's no need in my case, it sounds ridiculous, but to pull your hair out, I pulled my hair out, like, obviously very often. But
with that experience,
like, it's obvious that a lot of people, when they were starting a company and went out, the added value was, one of the added values was a lower price. I'm more, in this story, interested in what actually happened that you started thinking, not about selling yourselves and your heads, but that you decided to compete with the big boys in a relatively, like, carved up market, because not everyone really gets into that either. And the second thing is, if there are then any ambitions, actually, like, maybe with each next version to get closer to those standard prices. And we are thinking then, I understood rather about the West than the East, and I understood that the Czech Republic at this point actually, like, not at all. No, you don't take it as a market, right? That you've oriented yourselves 100% abroad.
Yes, there are several questions here. I'll try to answer them. So the Czech Republic is closed for us. Simply, even the Czech Republic is a very small market, and actually, why move in a small market when the market is globalized anyway? So the Czech Republic is sorted.
Sure. So the first one, to make it clear for you, what actually happened, that I'm going out, I understand that, I'm somewhat successful there, definitely more successful than in the Czech Republic. And what actually happens, what is that first phase when I say to myself, I'm stopping selling my head, but somehow I'll pack what I can do into boxes and start selling it as a product?
Sure. So a clever listener has surely already figured out that selling a product and selling a service is a very different thing. Selling a service is selling my work, while selling a product, especially like a digital product and licenses, that's a thing that when it works, it's a dream. It's a dream come true, because printing licenses, just clicking licenses somewhere on a license server and collecting tens of thousands of euros is very, very pleasant, very easy, and very efficient. So that would be fine if it worked. So why service? Why not service? And why yes product is obvious. The company scales easily. That is on the table. That's clear. And now then, product world, that was our choice that we wanted to make, because we had ambition. Simply, we wanted to grow, we wanted to scale the company, and so we went out then. And now then, actually, like, the question of the money, what was our competitive?
Well, I'm interested in one more thing there, how actually, besides the price, because the price was obviously one thing, how actually a company from the Czech Republic decides to go to a market that is taken by the big boys. And there it sounded like very nice with our know-how, based on an open source platform. I don't know if that was mentioned, but you actually build it on open source, right? What did those big boys do wrong, that you carved out your own space in that market?
Yes, so it is important then to mention that we work on those open source packages. It's actually not one open source, but it's just 50 plus open source packages that when you manage to connect them, pack them into a compact package, then that's the product. With that you go out. So actually, what did those big boys do wrong? Well, they didn't do anything wrong. They simply, historically, they just sold software that was locked. They were so-called black boxes. That means they just sold software that could do, of course, a lot of things, and you paid hard cash for licenses. It was because after the year 2000, let's say, several promising open sources emerged. That open source project of ours, which is like the main one, the core of it, and we just found our way in it, how to control it and how to get that added value into it, which otherwise those big black boxes have. So actually, open source is the reason why we were actually able to do these things in such a small team, let's say on a global scale, But again, I don't want it to sound too like boastful. We certainly found our place in the market and we function. On the other hand, those things for us to compete with those with the biggest players in the market, that certainly hasn't happened yet.
To compete with the big guys also means, like, should I start with that right from the beginning? Although I understand you still have that consulting arm. By the way, how is it today license sales versus the consulting arm, and how do you have it split?
Yes, of course, we can't simplify it quite like that. You can never just sell a product. That's impossible, because we also have to show on that product that it works. Very often a so-called pilot project is connected with the sale of the product, where we simply do another small, maybe little project on top of that, because they promised that they would buy the product. That means we are now 60% product, 40% service, let's say.
And I'll go back to the beginning then. In order for me to enter that market, which is staked out by those big boys, and stay there so they don't trample me, then I have to go out with some basis, some MVP and so on. How actually does the selection of that basis take place? And how do you think then actually about those other features, when and how they will get there, and so that you actually like don't just cause an alarm for the big guys who will push you out right after?
Yes, this is interesting. Yes, very often it can happen that you make a product, then you end up with on one big customer, and you keep developing that product as a service, and actually it becomes a service again. Well, so we didn't go this way, and like if some things went well, it was definitely that we have that portfolio of companies very, very wide and very flat. You know, that means our company is not dependent on one customer. Yeah, surely you know it. In the morning, you wake up and you find out that that's simply how many disasters have happened again simply overnight. Now you gradually put it out during the day, and you find out that you simply don't have time for that actual productive work that you wanted to do that day. So for us, when our biggest customer calls us that they are leaving us, then yes, in the evening I'll just have like one extra lager. But actually, in essence, like nothing changes, you know. That means we therefore have that portfolio of companies very wide, and like we are not like locked into one big customer. So that is like definitely an advantage.
I was asking, this is great, like having your eggs spread in more baskets as far as customers are concerned. I was asking about how you actually look at that development or product side, you know, because the basis is some package like version 01, with which I go and start knocking on the gates of those big guys, or taking, as my first boss used to say, stealing the lunch that those big competitors cooked for themselves. And then there's some thinking about what to add to that package when, so that it actually satisfies as many of your wide portfolio of clients as possible, you know? So how do you think about this?
Yes. It is exactly like that. We of course at the beginning our sales talk was based on, look, this can do 90% of the things, it costs 25%. Over time we found out that this doesn't work. You know, price, as you surely know, we are talking of course the whole time about B2B. That means we sell to big companies. Price is factor 4 or 5. You know, that means,
could you please repeat that for the camera once more?
Price is in B2B factor 4 to 5. I say this to all Czech entrepreneurs. We started with our only uniqueness being simply that low price. That simply doesn't work abroad. Almost nowhere does it work. It works only where they are starting with CFD, when they have never done anything before. There it works. But those are few.
We've pissed off a few people again. Well, okay. Well, so we're talking price is not the factor. So what is the factor?
The factor is speed, uniqueness, and we found our factor. It is technical support. It is simply, I call it knowledge transfer. And the more I say it, the better it actually is. We learned during those sales to say, look, software, that's a cold piece of code. That's like something we give you here, but it's a tool. But who will operate that tool, and what kind of house will they build with it? You know, when you sell simply a hammer, a shovel, that doesn't like mean yet whether you will live simply in Versailles or simply like in some shack simply by a pond.
That's true. That's true. Hey, I also observe with companies that decided to productize anything that they sometimes have a problem. That's a bad and negative word.
A challenge, yes. An opportunity.
Challenge. Recognizing when it's a product, when it's some customization, when it's support, and when it's already like consulting again. So how do you think about this?
Well, these are like interesting things, and it's simply, this is already individual, you know. This cannot be like parameterized in any way, so that it is written somewhere what is still support, what still fits into the support package, where already someone simply has to, let's say stop. Simply here we are already talking about some extra work simply in engineering simulations. And here it is necessary already simply where we spend like an enormous amount of our time. Here it is necessary simply already to wrap it again into some other package. But still I will try to reinforce like that previous thought. We started to look at it in a way that we don't sell licenses. We don't sell, or primarily don't sell licenses, and the product as such, we don't sell software. That is today simply already terribly little. We sell the whole concept where there is actually, we sell like as if skills, we sell competencies, you know. We say, look, with us, you will learn to do these simulations to this level on this application, and that will work for you. We will simply teach you, we will lead you by the hand, and that is showing to be quite strong. Again, it is necessary that at the customers, that the environment comes together. There is typically some leader who simply is open-minded. That means is able simply to think in the scope that they want to, like, that they want to walk that path of development with someone who has already been doing it for years, and like it makes sense.
So do I understand correctly that your typical clientele is someone who who is disappointed, or on the contrary, someone who is setting up their simulation department from scratch?
Exactly. There are again, I'd say two types. Those who are starting out, meaning those starting from scratch, they do look at the price a bit because historically they aren't used to paying those large amounts. Like 20,000 euros per person per year is just, you know, time flies. So it's quite a lot. That means we are relatively successful where companies or where that department is starting out, wants to build competence from scratch, wants to improve their products. We do quite well there. On the other hand, in large companies that have been using the same software for 20 years and don't pay for it out of their own pocket, the finance department pays for it and so on. There we have a problem. We can succeed there too, but only actually in case something goes wrong and they have like a budget cut. That means they just suddenly have far less money for the same projects. They come to us, you know. But then again, you know, like actually it's not a happy job when tearful customers come and say that their licenses were cut. So here we are. So what can you give us on the cheap? Yeah, that's not a happy job. That means we are far more successful where they are starting out, and we walk that path together, and trust is built. And those customers usually like never leave us.
When you look back at that first moment when you said to yourselves, let's go into product, what would you do differently in hindsight?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I'll say off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done differently when, you know, I have a different mindset now. Back then we were in a different place.
Well, but let me rephrase it. Yeah, maybe because product is truly the holy grail of many entrepreneurs who make a living with their brains. So maybe like in that community, there lives a myth that you absolutely detest and know is not true. Is there some rumor, belief in something that you know?
Well, I would
will lead them into a wall.
I would hate to go into technical details, because then among those engineers on that level of like that simply that use of that software, there are myths, lots of myths. But now we are talking on that business level, with that product. Well, like this product is that holy grail, that for sure. But even the competition there is simply, after all, extremely like developed, and they guard it. So again, it's far harder to succeed. And well, so actually product is like a great thing, and actually in the end you want it anyway, and like still we all want it. But yeah, it's much harder to succeed with it.
In hindsight, or if you were starting today, if you were thinking today about a second company or a second leg of your business, you know, how would you think about the product right at the beginning? Yeah, let's imagine that we have, generally speaking, a company with 9 to 15 smart minds, a consulting business, very like professional. How should I think about the product? What should I actually find out to know that the product isn't like a shot in the dark, but that it has a chance of success?
Yes, Martin, like I know where you're heading because I recognize myself in that. We at the beginning, like if I'm going to talk about us again, we at the beginning worked on let's do this and let's go to market with it. Someone will buy it. Yeah. So we did things that we liked because really like a new turbulence model is just truly like something irresistible. They will surely all understand how much work it took us to develop it, debug it, and now for Windows, for Linux, all those compilations, and now you go to market with it. Well, yeah, but the client is interested in something completely different in the end. They care if at the end of the day their project will be delivered and if their boss will be happy. And understanding these things took a while. So again, let's go back a step to your original question. It is necessary to develop what the customer wants, what the customer simply wishes. You just have to know simply who is my customer and how to make them happy. That's what it's all about. That means like market research, ideally, of course, at the beginning, for example, it was very hard for us to do because we had nothing. We started with zero, but ideally, if I were advising someone now, know your customer. Again, like it's a cliche, but it's simply true. Know your customer, find out what they want, find out what they are like, what their KPIs are, what their drivers are, what will make them happy, and exactly that. And don't talk about anything else, but only about how you will meet their goals. When you meet their goals, they will meet your goals. That's just a cascade that simply works brilliantly in business.
Hey, how is it with you? Already, are there signs of change in some business models? Because I found in certain reports that, now I probably don't remember off the top of my head who it was, I think Gartner. By 20, 30, 40% of business in general, consulting will completely change its business model. That means everything as a service, I call it in short. Yeah, software as a service. Actually, everyone knows that. With you, I was a bit surprised that licenses are still being sold. That means like a digital box. Is there some force pushing for you to be paid only for the result of that simulation, but not for the software as such?
Well, so yes, so software as a service is definitely a thing that is happening, like even in our field. And I must say that our field is, like I dare say, like a bit of an exception. Those things are, after all, let's say, done far worse as an online service than when I do it on my computer. Because simply that CFD is such a complex thing. That there actually arise such simply expert islands. Really, that person who does top-notch CFD, and I might not have said that. We always wanted to do top-notch things. We just weren't interested in like something being done, like we deliver it somehow, it turns out somehow. Those things where actually the existence of a solution is actually the success. We always cared simply about accuracy and about finishing like very like sophisticated simply workflows. And they're for that engineer, their PCs still win, normally working locally. Of course, when I have a larger task, I send it to a cluster. But that is quite often still most advantageous to have with you simply, and not somewhere simply like in the cloud, or at least that's what we think that it is so. And so software as a service, I think I am convinced that at least simply a certain segment of the market will never switch to it. Simply large companies will always do their development on their own iron. They will keep that leg under their roof. It won't run away from them anywhere. That means I am convinced that these things will still be with us.
I have a bit of a devil's advocate question. I can imagine that if I were a customer, I would want you to consider whether I shouldn't just pay per calculation.
Yes, but that...
No, and not like you're doing it, but that you actually help me use the tool in a way that I pay per calculation or per simulation rather than paying upfront for the license.
I mean, I get it, that's true, but actually what I said a moment ago still stands. Like who's going to check the quality, or who holds, or who is the owner of that solution? We sometimes really underestimate the relationship between the engineer and the work. We actually spend like eight hours a day at work, and it's a very close relationship between the technology and the engineer. And we as software as a service and these things are very complex. Like, would you simply working on a remote cluster, when I can't see the code, I don't know what's going on in the background. The features, all the functions I can use there are just limited. There's a drop-down menu to choose what I can use, and I don't even know how the method will work, and I just use it. So it's like using some kind of black box, and that's also behind some firewall.
I see.
And actually, one day that IP address stops working, and what will I have? What will I be left with? And so that remote work, if I'm relying on something, is actually that's not natural to engineers. After all, the engineer knows the solution to a large extent. They designed it themselves. They were able to improve it, and it's their baby. After all, you wouldn't want to have a baby remotely, and just it's that relationship is very close between the engineer and the technology. And we are betting on this, and we believe that at least in our field, it will stay this way for a while.
I see.
Baby as a service is an interesting business model. What I know is grandchild as a service. I borrow a grandchild and then I'm happy to give them back. At least that's what those who already have grandkids say. Another thing occurred to me. It wouldn't be a podcast in 26 if I didn't ask about AI. So when will AI either replace you as a consultant or design solutions for your customers on its own?
Well, Martin, AI is a huge topic, and I'd like to buy some time to think about it. Let me ask you, do you know of any field where AI isn't an absolute game changer and just changing everything?
I was actually sitting in a mastermind yesterday, business group like that, everyone from a different background, yeah. And actually we agreed on the fact that yes, like the hype is absolutely everywhere, but actually we don't really know many companies where it works great.
Well, excellent. That's true. So I'll start generally, then I'll get specifically to our field to be fair. AI is just a huge epical paradigm shift. It's just a massive change. Really, it's something that will change everything. I insist that we don't even realize yet what a huge change it is and what a massive shift we are in the middle of. And that's a good thing, because if we knew what is actually happening and what huge changes await us, and nobody knows what kind of like how this will evolve, we'd all go crazy from it. Half of us would end up on antidepressants and half of us would reach for something stronger. I meant alcohol just now, but let's leave it at that. We won't scare anyone. There's a lot of fear-mongering around it, but really huge changes await us. The genie is already out of the bottle, and now like what will happen with it, nobody knows, but like the technology itself isn't evil, isn't bad, it's just technology. But how humanity and then individual people handle it is entirely up to us. I'll continue because you did mention a tiny thing there, which I'll take the liberty of commenting on, and that is who it actually helps. There's a lot of talk about it, but who has it actually pushed forward? So that is a very, very interesting thing. Let's talk about it. I have a comparison that occurred to me on the way here when I was driving here, because I kind of expected us to talk about this. I compare AI to a free airplane. Imagine that the guys here in the studio got a free airplane. They can fly it wherever they want. Now the question is, when you fly, I don't know, to visit your college friend in America, is the airplane enough? Well, it's not. You still have to travel that last bit using some local transport. You rent a car or just use like public transportation. Now, the point is, AI has magically managed to provide 80% of anything instantly. I can get to 90% with a lot of effort, but to get to 100% of that service, if I were to replace it as I originally intended, I might never get there. So yes, it's a very, very strange thing. AI is a free airplane. It helps us quickly cross a huge distance. But that final like fine tuning of any service, product, or anything is up to us. And again, you have to deal with the nuances of your market, your company, your limitations, your struggles with cash flow and day-to-day operational matters. So yes, that AI, like who it helps, But let's be fair, like coding with AI and without AI, that's like that really. We back then, I still remember with Jirka when we coded, we just wrote from morning till night various scripts, Bash scripts, Python scripts. We wrote from morning till night from scratch. Really, we even studied it from books, and so this doesn't happen today. Today, nobody writes anything from scratch. So it already helps, just like in the back office, right?
I get that. Is there, and now specifically for those who understand modeling and are looking in this direction, is there any prediction of what AI will do, say, in modeling or in those computations?
Yes, well, nothing is ever official because the change is happening so fast that we're all basically just like catching our breath and trying things out here and there. One thing is for sure, AI is completely reshuffling the deck, especially in simulations where it's all virtual, and actually getting that automation in there, like let's say heavy and smart automation, is like relatively easy. I would divide it into two kinds. Imagine you have some productive things that you do day in and day out. So AI is making inroads there, and I dare say has already established itself very quickly, and will be and will never leave there. In things of, let's say, a research style where there is more development, that means a company comes and says, we have a very nasty thing happening here. A blade is breaking here under this regime, just with these things. Well, AI doesn't have an answer for that, right? Someone has to step in who has the experience, has the competence, has all those skills, resources, and so on, and says, okay, I'll do an analysis. Well, and that analysis isn't anywhere like to be gathered from AI. Nobody has ever done that before. So things it's not trained on, those are the research development things. Those will always be with us. After all, AI, I have a colleague who does like basic research at Charles University, theoretical particle research and so on. Well, AI obviously doesn't have data for that. It wasn't trained on that, and it won't help him there. So even in simulations, it's true that when a problem appears somewhere, we still step in and do a project. And I expect, based on that, a big increase again in consulting services, because in a way, those products are becoming a commodity, because AI will take care of it. It will prepare the inputs there so that the software takes them, and it will transform the outputs from that software back into reports so that the user understands them. That means actually the software is becoming a tool. It's commoditizing. It just costs something. Something comes out of it, so we pay someone for it, or we automate open source. In this, the deck is really being reshuffled. That's what's happening there. And I expect a big increase in consulting services back, because someone at the end still has to know how it's still done the old-fashioned way. And that's what we're waiting for.
Yeah. Hey, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this return is as fast as possible, and that you scale where you want and at the speed you want.
Back to the roots.
And well, actually,
for those golden Czech hands, simply on BDO, we really say it often at work. We make fun of it. This concept will return, and it will be here like in full force.
Only the pickaxes will be different. Yeah, I'm actually waiting for that too. Hey, I wish you all the best. Thanks for visiting. To conclude, I have 3 quick questions here as a standard rapid fire.
Tools are changing. Let's do it.
The first question is, what should hang in every R&D department's kitchen regarding modeling?
Oof. Okay, so like simulations are extremely complex. Okay, I'll say what should hang in the kitchen. The devil is in the detail. That means every project is different, and it always depends on the specific detail. Every simulation is different, every requirement is different, and every like actual evaluation and transformation and bringing it to results and lessons learned is different. So the devil is in the detail.
When you look back, no. When you look back at your history, then what would you never repeat, even if it were a shortcut to success?
I don't know. I can't say. Now you've like caught me off guard.
Fair enough. And what book, podcast, YouTube video has recently changed your mind about business?
Also an interesting question. Well, so I don't know. I confess that I've now returned to reading fiction, and And because I just like I read things, like I always rotated simply some politics, spiritual things about business and so on over and over. I finally found out that it's in that fiction too. You know, it's there, that wisdom of life, and it actually,
Or a friend.
it's there. Yeah, of course, it depends on what you come across, but I returned to fiction and I'm enjoying it. I'll say a book that I now recently I finished reading it, Shantaram. It's what's the author's name? I don't know now if it's David Roberts. It's Shantaram. It's from India, where about a person, such a biographical piece is. There's a lot of simply wisdom, interesting things, and actually at the end it makes you realize that we like have something to appreciate about where we live and how we are.
That's actually a really great tip at the end, because I realized that a lot of listeners here are like devourers of new things, and relaxing with something that is as far as possible from everyday worries might not be a bad idea at all. So thank you for it, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed and wishing you success.
It was nice. Thank you.
So there you have it. If we poured some new information into you today, or you generated some sticky notes and are about to execute your ideas that we generated here, then we did our job well. As I like to say here, at such a moment, there is a standard set of wishes and requests. I remind you of my newsletter. So if you enjoy what I do for you, try to check out www.martinhurych.com/newsletter. I remind you that there are already more than 1,700 subscribers. If your email is not there yet, I'd love to see it. Well, and in terms of Zážeh, as always, I'll ask you for likes, sharing, forwarding to a friend who might find this episode useful. Well, and all that's left for me is to keep my fingers crossed for you, and not only in the productization of your heads, I'm keeping my fingers crossed and wishing you success. Thanks.